Okay, so creating space to talk about something that's been a topic in my internal world for a long time. Orientation in time and space, and the neurophysiological capacity of consciousness to sustain orientation in time and space, or consistently experience a continuity within the flow of experiencing time and orientation in time and space. So I'm here, and then now it is a moment later, and I am here. How does the brain-body system know to calculate the experience so that moment by moment, movement by movement, shift by shift, through environmental stimulus, internal sensations, all the various aspects that comprise our experience through consciousness, how does our brain-body system know to connect those dots automatically? How do I know that I exist in the same day, the same year, and the same general environmental terrain of space from that moment to this moment? And what happens when the brain-body system is no longer offering that automatic ability of consciousness? These are some of the questions that we explore. So, as I am moving, there is motion in my body. The stimulus from my environment is changing. I was standing by a building on concrete, and now I'm standing by flowers on a flagstone path. How does my brain-body system know to calculate that there is continuity within the flow of experience from there to here? How does it do that? And what happens when whatever is allowing that to happen is no longer effectively engaging in an unconscious manner? Part of my dissociative, or me and my many inner persons that I live with, it was like every day. Yes, every day. The consciousness I live in doesn't change. The applications creating experience may shift. The actual consciousness I live in does not just change on a day-to-day basis. It's merely the engagement of the consciousness I live in that changes, which is why I feel like a different person every day. But I digress. I know, rabbit trails, trains of thought. So, during our dissociative experiences, that ability for automatic unconscious orientation in time and space disappears or becomes dramatically reduced, altered, or diminished within our experience of consciousness through our neurophysiology. Neurophysiological applications of consciousness is how we describe it. Because it's our body and brain system operating in a particular manner that's contributing to the way that we experience ourselves and our surrounding world through our consciousness. And so it was so intense that about a year and a half ago, when I would change the room that I was in, we'll demonstrate a particular example that's coming to mind. A protector is sharing with me. But things were so severe that every shift of stimulus felt like it erased the knowledge of what was happening prior to the stimulus being activated. And my entire sense of self and where I existed physically and where I existed within the linear concept of time and orientation to my surrounding world and internal knowledge disappeared and shifted into a different realm of being. So this is the example. From outside to inside of a garage to inside of a house to inside a different room of a house. I only went a few yards. Like, I didn't go very far, right? And yet, this going from here to hear, put my shoes back on, to hear would cause 4 dramatic switches of consciousness, so that my sense of self, who I was, what I was about, the way that I wanted to, or the way that I unconsciously had habits of presenting myself to the world, all those different things that make a person, all the aspects of self-orientation, all the aspects of orientation of where I existed in time. Am I 10 years old? Am I 16 years old? Am I 20 years old? Am I 25 years old? And then the orientation of space, where my body existed. Is my body here and oriented next to a thing? Or am I floating away and I don't exist in the space at all? Or am I small? Am I a regular tall person? Am I 3 feet tall? Am I 5 feet tall? All of these different aspects changed somehow. They changed. They shifted. They switched. And it was so intense and so terrifying and so anxiety-provoking and so disorienting. And with every switch, our position of self-orientation, our position of physical orientation, our position of time orientation would change. And that would cause my thoughts, feelings, memories, perceptions, perspectives, confidence, ability of communication, visual processing, stimulus processing, body awareness. All of it would change in a matter of nanoseconds. Nanoseconds. And it was so deep in the body, like it wasn't a mental experience. It obviously impacted my experience of mind, but it was not a mental experience. It was a physical experience. This was occurring, I know exactly, in my body somehow. And so there was really no way to describe it at the time. And here we are, a year and a half later, slowly putting language to our experiences as we gain new levels of lucidity. I'm over 300 hours into oxygen therapy, along with our skull being adjusted, along with deep integrative work of memory processing, along with creating dozens and dozens and dozens of healing resources to help reduce the severity of traumatic stress, depression, anxiety, dissociation, etc. And only now am I beginning to gain the ability, grow the ability to describe what's been happening all this time. And so, yeah, I know. I'm very grateful that we have a home. But even this, we weren't able to experience this. All of this, we would look out and we would not see what I see now. Instead, our eyes were processing an entirely different reality, where our vision was projecting memories, and that is the world that we were seeing. We would look out, and we would see what this looked like 10, 15 years ago. Our vision wasn't processing the data as it occurs, and the brain was filling in the gaps of what our vision wasn't telling us with projections activated in our unconsciousness from memories that we did not consciously remember, yet our body remembered. Implicit projections were the entire landscape of our experience of consciousness for a very long period of time, over a year, if not a couple years. So orientation in time and space. How on earth does the brain-body system apply its natural miracle magic-making abilities of consciousness to sustain orientation in time and space? How do you know that this moment is connected with that moment that we just had a few seconds ago or a few minutes ago over there? How does the brain know to connect those things? How do you know that yesterday existed as it does and has a relationship with these moments unfolding today? How do you know what happened a year ago, and how do you understand the gap of time between then and now? How does your brain-body system do that? And what the heck is going on when it's not engaging those natural abilities? Through the neurophysiological applications of consciousness. How? What is happening? These are the questions we want to explore. It's important. It's so important. How do I know that there is a sense of potentiality tomorrow and that this moment is not the only thing that will ever exist in my life? How? And what happens when that ability isn't engaging naturally? How do I know that that barn exists over there and not right here, or not at all? How? How do I know that my words and the air I'm breathing and the light waves in the atmosphere allowing for things to be lit so I can visually process them effectively, and the gravity holding me down here on Earth are all existing energetically, and yet things like this and this and this are existing physically? How does the mind, the brain-body system, understand these things? Because there are times where this did not exist at all. I couldn't really see it. I couldn't really feel it. I couldn't really perceive its existence. It wasn't actually there. If I was doing this, this would have been an illusion. And yet, light waves I could see. I could witness energy, but not physicality, because of the way that my brain-body system was engaging with itself and the surrounding experience of life. How do we distinguish the specifics of senses and sensational experiences, the words, the individual sensational aspects of things being processed through our senses? Sensual sensation. No. The singular strands of sensation through our senses. How does our brain do that? And what happens when that processing becomes distorted or inaccessible or reduced or altered or jumbled? How do I know that that vibration is a sound and not a vibration coursing through my entire body? For over a year, every time an airplane would go overhead, our entire body would feel vibrations. It would activate a dorsal vagal response, and we would lose consciousness and experience oxygen deprivation immediately and elongatedly for an extended period of time. Sometimes it would take 6 hours to be able to breathe again after that. And so we'd lay down and put our feet above us and try and regulate the flow of oxygen. We would chant and create vocal vibrations to try and create a vibrational sensation that outweighed the vibrations from the airplane. Every day for over a year. Every time an airplane would fly overhead, we'd feel full body vibrations activating a traumatic response in our body, instead of our brain interpreting the sound as being something distant. How does the brain-body system do these things? And what the heck is happening when that's no longer occurring in a normal capacity? I use that with very dramatic quotations. Normal is completely relative, but scientifically, the brain-body system is intended to do XYZ things so that the brain can know that there's a sound above from an airplane and not vibrations here present in the body. You know? It's not a normal, big eye roll, experience. Normal is completely relative. But at the same time, the average expected experience is not to feel full body vibrations when there's an airplane flying like super far away, you know? So like normal, right? Yeah, man. Super crazy stuff, bro. Life be a trip. So, I know. This laptop's getting heavy. Recording on my laptop. Because we can record for longer on here. Oh, and we can see ourselves when we record, which helps us have orientation in time and space. My body and my brain are constantly forgetting where they exist. And that's one of several, I know, right? Several reasons why we carry a mirror around with us. Because if we can see ourselves in the mirror through the reflection, our brain can be reminded, oh, I'm existing right here. And return its attention to the present moment rather than having all these anxiety sensations while it's trying to be like, where am I? Where do I even exist? Because really that's what our brain-body system is doing most of the time. Like, where the heck am I? Orientation in time and space. How do you know that you had a childhood and yet you are no longer a child? Instead of not knowing about a childhood existing because you're here as an adult body versus feeling like you are still a child in your body and not having access to the adult present day sense of self. How does your brain-body system know these things? And what's happening when that automatic sensation is shifting to something that is different and unique? You guys are funny. So, oh yeah, it's a shift. I know. Every time we say so, it's like we're starting a new thing that we're saying. So is my way of orientating myself within my perceptual thoughts of consciousness. It's like the way that my unconsciousness gathers itself to prepare to create new thoughts to speak. I've noticed that. How do I know that this exists? That this bush here, can you see me? That this bush here exists, but a foot away from me rather than being me or not existing at all? How does the brain differentiate sensations in relationship to self? How does the brain-body system know that I exist here as an external, explicit, physical person that can interact in a physical reality while simultaneously sustaining awareness to some degree, conscious or unconscious, it's there. It might not be direct awareness, but some form of awareness throughout the system, right? Of internal sensations like muscle tension or hunger or thirst or an emotion or a thought, energetic things that aren't existing out here. How does the brain do both of those things simultaneously? And what happens when it's no longer doing that? What's happening inside of the neuroscience? And what's happening in terms of the experience being being shifted or altered or uniquely changed. How does the brain know where the body exists in relationship to an orientation in time and space? How? And how does it connect that knowing of the presence with the knowings of the past? When someone says, oh, remember that one time we did that one thing at that one place with those one people and it was like this one sensation? And you're over here as a separate individual person being like, yeah, oh my goodness, I remember that. How are those two people sustaining access to the present moment self in an explicit manner while simultaneously having awareness of the implicit sensations where they're connecting an orientation in time and space through memory of a separate time and space with the present moment, knowing that there is a distinguished linear gap between those concepts? How? And what happens when that ability shrinks or becomes jumbled or altered or diminished or reduced or absent? Askew. Yeah, I say because there's an emotional sensation of being humored by saying the word askew. Exactly. How does the brain catalog trying to say categorize and catalog words. Catalog. How does the brain catalog memories as personal experiences that can be consciously recalled in an explicitly processed manner that has some form of implicit sensation? Like when you remember something, you're not necessarily just being over here as a completely objective observer, like, yes, those are the facts of the experience. No, it's like a personal autobiographical thing of like, I went through that, and there's joy, and there's sadness, and there's some kind of sensation attached to that. So how does the brain connect the explicits, the facts, the summary, the verbal or word-based description with the implicit sensation of emotion or sensation or feeling or a general image that may provoke a sensation consequentially? And how are those two things so deliciously intertwined and integrated, and then that is separate from this, even though they can interact with one another? The present moment is not reliving the memory or not able to remember it at all, and yet there's a conscious recollection where there's a gap, there's a distance of time and space. That happened, but it happened over there, not right here in the present moment. How does the brain do that? And what's happening when it's not doing that? These are the things I ponder every day. These are the things I ponder. How do I know that I'm not upside down all the time? How do I know that? How do I comprehend the sensation of being upright? What the heck is, how? How do I know the whole world's not upside down? How do I know that there are feet on the ground, and a head up here somehow above that? How do I know the difference between above and below? How do I know the difference between right side up and inside out? How do I, or I don't know if that's the right opposite for that. How do I know these things? And what's happening when I can't get to the access of knowing these things? When I'm in a moving vehicle and my body is staying still and yet moving through time and space simultaneously. Like my muscles are not causing motion. I am not moving like that, and yet I am moving through time and space. How does my brain-body system process that experience, and what happens when it's not able to process that experience anymore? We dissociate really severely during car rides. And it seems to be traced back to a difficulty sustaining orientation in time and space when our body is stationary and yet the thing we're sitting in is moving. There's some kind of discrepancy in the communication where it's not being effectively processed, and my blood flow and my brain-body system shifts, and my ability to access my brain regions becomes reduced or altered or jumbled or fragmented. And note, it's not the brain regions that are fragmented, it's the access, the conscious access that is fragmented. My brain regions are still there, existing as their miraculous selves, just the conscious access becomes shifted, altered, jumbled, fragmented. So how do I know my orientation in time and space? In a variety of settings. When you're on a roller coaster ride, how do you know where you exist moment by moment throughout that experience in an unconscious manner? And what were to happen if your body-brain system wouldn't be able to tell you that information? How do I know that this is a solid object even though it's soft and flexible? How do I know that this is a solid object even though I can bend and mold it? And how do I process the difference between this kind of solid physical object and this kind of solid physical object, something I can't mold or bend or move? How does the brain process these different textures and sensations of physicality? And how are these distinguished from the air and light waves that are around us that we can't see? How is the brain doing that? And what happens when that processing changes somehow? Through the neuroscience internally and in the way that it creates personal experience. How? What's happening? These are the questions I ponder. How does the brain-body system sustain an unconscious knowing of orientation in time and space to create some kind of continuity within the flow of sense of self and unfolding life experience? How do I know that I exist here, but at one time I also existed over there, and there? And how does that unconscious knowing affect our present experience? Could we still be the person that we are if we didn't have this backdrop knowing of these unconscious self-orientations through time and space that can be processed as memories with an explicit and an implicit factor to them? Would we still be the people that we are if we didn't have access to these knowings? Would you still be you?